Gerald, can you tell us what you think, in view of what's happening in Israel at the present time? I'm thinking of the Palestinian Christians. Where do you see them fitting into the great scheme of things of what's happening in Israel?
Well, it's a very sad thing because many of them are anti-Israel. Many of them have been brought up, even though they're brought up, say, in a Christian family, they've possibly been brought up in a Muslim nation.
Yes.
So they've imbibed a lot of Muslim feeling and attitude toward Israel. And many of them believe that what they call Palestine is actually an Arab territory. Many of them don't believe that Israel have any claim to it at all, which is terrible, really. But there are many beautiful Arab Christians. My daughter, who's lived in Jerusalem for 20 years, she's a member of a Palestinian church in Jerusalem.
Wow.
And it's the largest church in Jerusalem, the largest congregation in Jerusalem. And they are charismatic and filled with the Spirit.
Wow.
And they love Israel, but they suffer a lot of persecution, yeah, because they believe that Israel has a right to live the people of Israel have a right to live in the land of Israel.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but I believe that something amazing is going to happen there. Ian was just saying about the Israeli army, the defense force, and without doubt, it's one of the most remarkable defense forces in the world. It's one of the smallest, yet most effective, partly because of the weaponry that they've got available to them, and also the strategy. But the thing is, that this attack on Israel, which is going to be made very soon, is described in detail in Psalm 83, the entire Psalm, and also in Zechariah 12, where it speaks about the surrounding nations attacking Jerusalem. And it speaks about the attack coming against them, and it seems quite obvious that the Israeli Defense Force will not be adequate to counteract the kind of attack that is coming. Since they last tried to invade Israel, so much has changed in terms of high-tech weapons. They could conquer Israel, theoretically, they could conquer Israel without putting one foot on the soil, because they've got missile launchers up in southern Lebanon, they've got weapons in Syria, they've got weapons of mass destruction which they can aim at every part of Israel. And the military people, they speak of Israel, they say it's a one-bomb nation, meaning that if one nuclear bomb was dropped in the right place, the whole thing would be finished. The Jews have often said the Arabs could afford to lose 20 wars, but we cannot afford to even lose one.
So prophetically, the outcome...
The outcome is that it says in Zechariah 12:5 that the Alufim, that means the military generals, say, our strength is in the Lord of hosts.
Fantastic.
So there's going to be a switching of their confidence and strength from their own military prowess to, it says in the same verse, that the Israeli army will be led by the angel of the Lord. And that's a pseudonym for the Messiah.
Yes.
So somehow or other, the situation is going to be so precarious that God is going to intervene directly and physically, and the army is going to be led by the angel of the Lord, who will give them a tremendous victory. And in verse 9, God says, I aim to destroy all the enemies that come against Jerusalem. And then immediately afterwards, in verse 10, he says that after that battle, after that victory is attained, he said, I'm going to pour out my Ruach HaKodesh, my Holy Spirit, on all the Israelis.
Yes.
So there's going to be an outpouring of the Spirit that will be far greater, more fascinating, more amazing than the day of Pentecost.
Yeah.
On the day of Pentecost, 3,000 Jews received the Holy Spirit. But when this takes place, the whole nation the Holy Spirit will come upon the whole nation. And he says that the feeblest of the Jews will be like King David, and the house of David will be like God himself. So there's going to be a supernatural intervention in this thing that will gloriously rescue Israel from the attack that is made against them. But that's not the greatest thing about it. The greatest thing is that immediately afterwards, God is going to pour out his Holy Spirit on the whole nation.
Fantastic.
And I believe that's going to be the beginning of the one new man that Paul talks about, who is neither Jew nor Gentile. Now, you can hardly find such a person now. But after that happens, the whole world is going to say, the God of Israel is the true and living God.
Yes.
You know, and there's going to be a tremendous respect for God. If they're not all converted, they're all going to have a great respect for his power and strength and the way that he's rescued Israel in such an amazing manner, and then poured out his Spirit upon them and transformed the whole nation into a messianic nation with faith in Yeshua HaMashiach,
Yes.
which is amazing.
Where do you see Iran now
In the context
of Israel?
In Psalm 83, it mentions, it starts off with Asaph calling upon the Lord. He says, don't you realize, God, that these armies are going to make war against you? And he mentions 10 nations, and they're all Arabic and they're all Muslim. Mm-hmm. And they are the ones who are going to launch the attack upon Israel. But God, I believe it describes the same war, the same period of time. Psalm 83 and Zechariah 12, I believe they both describe the same situation.
Yes.
And in the old days, what we call Iran today was part of the old Assyrian Empire. And he mentions the Moabites and all these other tribes and clans, and he says, and Assyria has joined them too. Now that Assyria was the ancient Assyria, part of which is now Iran. Yeah, so they're going to be part of it. But it says they have joined them. They've joined the other 9. So they're not geographically part of the body, but somehow they join themselves. And one way they're joining themselves is supplying weapons to all of these people like the PLO, like the Hamas, like the Hezbollah, all these terrorist organizations who make no secret of the fact that the one thing they want to achieve is the demolition of Israel. And the